But also just thanks to Unison for sponsoring this whole afternoon on May Day in Manchester. Got a great track record on international affairs and on Palestine, and it's good to see that the work is continuing. And I know that there's been an odd bit of media coverage recently around issues linked to Palestine, around anti-Semitism, around Zionism, and I'm going to come to the sort of attacks and response to that. But one of the things I want to do, and I know most of you will be active on Palestine, is just talk a bit about what's happening in Palestine. Because one of the things behind the attacks that's going on is actually to stop the debate, is actually to move the attention and focus away from what Israel is doing in Palestine to other issues. And therefore I think it's just always quite important to remind ourselves of what the issues and the problems are. Then I'll talk a bit about the attack and then also about what we can be doing by way of solidarity. And I was just talking to one of the comrades here who's just come back from a PSC delegation to the West Bank and East Jerusalem, not able to get into Gaza. And it just reminded me of a story which I think encapsulates the issues of the occupation and what's happening in Palestine. And I was on a delegation a few years ago with some esteemed people. There was a lord and a baroness, and we went to Hebron, which is in the south of the occupied West Bank, and we've been shown around by this young guy called Issa, who was a youth organiser in Hebron, which, if you don't know, is a Palestinian town city. It's the home of where Abraham's tomb is, and so there's a religious significance there as well. And what's happened right in the middle of Hebron, they have colonised effectively what's Shahada Street, which is like the high street of Hebron. It's like taking Princess Street out of Manchester. And at one end they put a settlement of 200 or 300 people. At the other end they will not allow Palestinians to use that street. It's kept free for the settlers to stroll down and go to the Abraham's mosque and the tomb there. And there is literally a green line that is painted on the street, which the IDF ensure that Palestinians can't go across. So on this occasion when we were there, Issa was showing the delegation around, and he started strolling us up Shahada Street, and the IDF were looking the other way, and the settlers spotted him. They knew him as a local activist, so they phoned the police, who got on to the IDF, who came down, and there was this confrontation. And it wasn't just me and a baroness and the lord. There was some Christian monitors there from Canada and a few other people there. So there was this sort of contretemps, and in the end they arrested Issa. We got him out overnight. But why I make the point is he was born in Hebron. He was the one Palestinian who wasn't able to walk down his own high street. Me, as a citizen of the UK, the Baroness and the Lord, they were all right. The Canadians were okay. The Israeli IDF, everyone but the Palestinian, was allowed to go down their own high street. And that is what military occupation means in reality on a day-to-day basis for Palestinians, and that's what they live through. And you say, is the occupation stupid? What's the problem? And people almost get, I think, blind to the fact that this is a vicious military occupation, and it's been going on. It will be 50 years since 1967 next year, and it is still and getting worse and more oppressive all of the time. And if you think about the consequences of a military occupation, you think there's a few troops floating around or something, you know, there's a big border, but actually, if you go to Palestine, it affects everyone's daily life in a way that you cannot imagine. And I won't do the whole day, but if you could imagine a bit of a day in the life of a Palestinian under occupation at the moment, well, at night you might be wondering whether there's going to be an incursion with Israeli military forces coming into your town to whisk away people. Very often it's the middle of the night, 3 or 4 o'clock, when they will whisk into your home to take away your children, who they're arresting for allegedly stone throwing, or looking at a stone that they might throw, or looking at a wall at which they might throw a stone at. That happens, and they're taken away to military courts in the middle of the night. At 4 o'clock in the morning, if you're in Bethlehem, you'll have to start going to queue if you've got a job in Israel to get through the checkpoints, because you have to make sure you're through the checkpoints when they open at 7 o'clock in order to get, if you're allowed through, to get to the job. Alternatively, you're just trying to travel around the occupied territories. You'll have to get up really early to make sure you get to your place of work on time, because the checkpoints, the wall, the roads you're not allowed to use, all of the things that put in the way of your normal life. And so there is no normal life for Palestinians within Palestine. It's not just that there's not a settlement to the issue, or there's not a problem. It is every aspect of education, of life, of learning that is controlled by the Israelis and affects what the Palestinians do. So this isn't some academic question that we're seeking to resolve on Palestine. It's a real one. And in the current climate, we put some advert in The Guardian and in the New Statesman saying Palestine is being built out of existence. And I've been there, most years, in recent years, and you can physically see the colonisation of Palestine going on a daily basis. And you hear about settlers and settlements. You think this is some wood cabins in some sort of area of prairie in the US or something. These are towns and cities that are being built, high-speed trains that are being built, motorways that are being built that aren't allowed to be used by the Palestinians. And if you look at it, this is showing the real intention of Israel. It has no intention of leaving the occupied territories. It is building a permanent infrastructure for permanent colonisation of Palestine. And we don't need to look any further than the settlement colonies. There are now over 650,000 settlers in colonies inside the occupied territory of East Jerusalem and West Bank and so on. And that doesn't sound bad, but actually the Geneva Convention makes it very explicit. If you're the military power, you are not allowed to transport your citizens into the occupied territory with a view for them to live there permanently. And that means you're no longer occupying, you're trying to, if you like, take over control and ownership of the country on a permanent basis. And if you've got 650,000 people in the size of Palestine and growing more and more on every basis, the intentions of Israel are clear, and it's not peace that they're interested in, it's permanent occupation and control of those territories is what they're interested in. And so I think you have to look at that scenario, and I mentioned about child prisoners. Since the occupation, about 1 in 5 of Palestinians has been in prison. And this isn't because Palestinians are a people of criminals, it's because every excuse is used to use prisons to intimidate the Palestinian resistance. And of that 7,000, there's about 400 who are children at any one time, and about 700 in administrative detention, i.e. they've not had a trial or been charged in any shape or form. So I hope that just gives you a picture of what is going on in terms of both the current scenario and why I think it's so important that we have meetings like this is that the world has stood idly by for 50 years and done nothing. They have resolutions, they talk about it, they say how difficult it is, but actually they are complicit with the continuation of that circumstance. And the Boycott National Committee, the civil society organisations in Palestine called for a global boycott and divestment and sanctions of Israel. And this is what's being demonised at the moment as some sort of horrendous thing, that in some way it is wrong for us to choose not to buy, not to invest in, not to supply goods and services to illegal settlements, to a state that's in breach of international law, and the rest. And you'd think that therefore BDS is some revolutionary cause that's got some outrageous demands behind it. But I just want to mention the three things that are the founding principles of the BDS movement. It's that there should be, wrong page, the end of the occupation and the colonisation of Palestinian land, recognising the fundamental rights of Arab Palestinian citizens within Israel to full equality, because there's over 50 laws that discriminate against Palestinians within Israel, and finally respecting the rights of Palestinian refugees. And there's a lot of talk about refugees going on at the moment, but the refugee issue for Palestinians stems from 1947-1948, when the State of Israel was created, having been donated generously by Britain to the Israelis. But the Nakba week, which is coming up, the Nakba, which is the catastrophe, which is what happened in 1947-48, which was the demolition of 400 to 500 Palestinian villages, and those refugees being excluded and expelled from Palestine. They still live in refugee camps. If you go to Bethlehem, if you go to Lebanon, if you go to Jordan, those people, their sons and daughters and so on, still live in those refugee camps, on top of the people from subsequent expulsions and so on. Not a bit that was broadcast, but I was asked on Newsnight in the preamble bit about, well, what do you think about the right of return for the refugees? They've got one. The UN says they have one. Every other refugee on the planet. What's happening here is that Israel is trying to say that this particular group of refugees have not got the right to go back to their home. And so it'd be really good if you're looking for things to do. There's a whole range of events going on in Nakba Week in May, locally and so on, to go and celebrate, if you like, Palestinian culture and life, but also commemorate the catastrophe that took place then. But the attack that is taking place, that we've seen, if you like, being used in the last week or two, is a strategy. It's not an accident. Now, there's a lot of talk about conspiracy theories, and you might think I'm trying to invent one, but actually there was a report done by a think tank in Israel called the Reut Institute in 2010, which set out the strategy that was formally adopted by the Israeli government as the strategy that they were going to follow. And what they said was, and what they were going to do at that time, was to propose a process of rebranding BDS activists as racists and extremists. And that has been consistently followed as the plan of what they've been trying to do, because they were worried that BDS was actually having the sort of effect and impact that, if you like, international governments weren't. And we've seen that on Veolia, G4S, HP, Hewlett Packard, which is our next target. All of these have felt the real pressure of global boycott, divestment and sanctions. And so the demonising that is taking place is trying to suggest that BDS is itself anti-Semitic. Is actually trying to silence debate about what Israel is doing currently and what their activities are. There's been a lot of debate about Zionism, and again I was asked last night, what was your view about Zionism? And there's lots of forms, lots of shapes it comes in. But I said, if you look at Israel's actions, what does it mean in practice? The Zionism of Israel at the moment means the illegal occupation. It means the settlements, it means the wall, it means the siege of Gaza. If that is Zionism, the whole world ought to be opposing it, and that is the result and the consequences of the Zionist programme and approach which they're following at the moment. And the British government is complicit with that whole approach. And indeed, forces in all of the political parties, major parties in this country, have as well. But we've had reference already to both TTIP, if you were here in the last meeting, it being used to try and shut down BDS. The government making announcements that councils weren't allowed to take an ethical stance in relation to their procurement policy if it related to Israel. And also, you've had pension funds being told the same thing, that you're not allowed to take an ethical approach if it relates to Israel and Palestine. And that's been picked up as well. The SC, we had our bank accounts closed by the co-op on the basis of they thought they were implementing it US and prevent anti-extremism strategy, because we send our millions of dollars off to fund terrorism around the planet. There's another little organisation called Thomson Reuters who run a database which they sell to security firms, to governments, to banks and so on, about people who are meant to be involved in terrorism and money laundering. And we're now taking them to court, but they identified the PSC and me as terrorists who shouldn't have banking or other facilities available. So that atmosphere of fear is what they're trying to create so that BDS doesn't act. And we think the best way to react against that is to challenge the arguments, is to stand up and say what they're saying is wrong, and it is not racist to refuse to buy goods that come from Israel, goods that are in breach of international law. We shouldn't be supplying arms to prop up the occupation. There's nothing racist about that. Indeed, that should be our duty. You know, if this was money laundering for drugs or money laundering for any other sort of cause, actually the foot would be the other way around, that you've been told not to do it. And if you think about it, there's a nonsense. What are they saying? That you must buy illegal goods? You must invest in firms that are breaking international law? I mean, that's the logic of the sort of position that they're going to. So BDS, which is under attack for good strategic reasons by Israel, because it's the way in which we've been able to break, if you like, out of where we've been, is the one way which the Palestinian civil society has said we can try and rebalance the forces that there are. Now, I don't know if you noticed that Netanyahu just said that they weren't going to participate in the sort of French peace talks, because they want to have bilateral talks with Palestine to come to a pact. Has there ever been more unequal negotiations taking place with a country trying to negotiate with your occupier, the military force there, your own freedom, with the rest of the world standing back? So there is a requirement for us to make sure that BDS is alive and well, that I invite you to participate in the Nakba events, but also on the 4th of June, we've got a Hewlett-Packard Action Day where we've said stop G4S, well we now want to stop Hewlett-Packard, and there'll be events around the country. If you go on our website, you'll be able to have a look and find out where those things are going on and to get involved. And if you go to the, I don't know if the stand's still open, but the PSC Manchester Group stand, they've got a very good leaflet which is about 10 things that you can do to get involved and support Palestine. And I'll just conclude, because I've had my warning time, that I can't go as far as John did in saying they're winning on TTIP, but they are really frightened about the level of public support and global support there is for Palestine. Everything they do isn't having the effect of reducing the support for Palestine, is increasing the support for Palestine. And this isn't just blowing the PSC's own trumpets, but it is a bit, because one of the things we want to do is join. But our organisation has grown in membership, doubled. Our Twitter has gone up 10 times. Our Facebook has gone from 400,000 to over 4 million. Our list has gone, our email list has gone from 25,000 to 250,000. There is a huge, huge interest in the issue of Palestine. When we organised demonstrations, there were tens of thousands of people out. It's great that this room is full and that people are here, but actually the battle is still going on, and we need everybody to participate and do things in any way you can. And that's joining the local group, it's joining the national group, it's getting involved in activities, it's combating your MP and being involved, and just standing up in favour of Palestine. So thanks for coming, and then hopefully you'll also get involved in things going forward.